Thank you for joining us for today's training on billing rules. We are going to be talking about billing rules, how they are used in Management Plus and how to create them, as well as the different types of billing rules. So we're going to go ahead and go into File, Billing, Billing Setup, and Billing Rules. When you come into this screen, you're going to see a search box up at the top. This is going to allow you to search for specific rules that meet the criteria that you have typed in. When that box is clear, it will show you all of the rules that have been set up in your system. The first column is going to show you the description, then we have the rule type, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and then the affected fields. The affected field is helpful when you're looking for a rule that pertains to a specific field. So if you click on this little square that has a little triangle in it, that's going to allow you to filter out the different billing rules. So if you're looking for any billing rules that are used to affect box 33, which is the group NPI number, then you can select that and it will display all rules that pertain to that field. You can switch this back to all to go back to view all rules in your system. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about the different types of rules that we have. So when you click Add, it's going to give you this little menu box. There's 4 types of billing rules. The first one is charge entry. This is going to come into play anytime you are posting charges or in that charge entry screen for a patient's account. Then we have HCFA 1500 processing. This rule is going to apply when you are printing paper HCFA claims, okay? And then we have the electronic processing, which is going to affect all claims that are processed electronically when the appropriate criteria is met. And then we have UBO4 processing. This is when you're printing UBO4s for institutional claims. We're going to go ahead and start with just a basic charge entry rule, and then we'll touch on each of the others. When you are creating a billing rule, the best way to think about billing rules is cause and effect. If this top area, the conditions, are true, then the following actions will occur. So it is just cause and effect. Up at the top, it says when a charge is entered that meets the following conditions. Now the first 2 drop downs, you can just leave those at the default. We'll look at those real quick. You can say adding a new charge if you're changing an existing charge, or the default, which combines the 2, adding or changing a new or existing charge, and whenever the charge information changes, or when the charge is posted. So again, the 2 defaults that are in the system, you can just leave those unless you want your rule to only apply to new charges. Then we have additional conditions. Now, the add branch, this is a drop down where you can put and or statements. So if it is Medicaid and Medicare, or if it is Blue Cross or Cigna, you can use these branches to help you with those rules. Good rule of thumb, if you are trying to create a rule where you're saying if it's A or B or C, just create different rules so you end up with 3 rules instead of 1. They are easier to manage, they're easier to find the rule and determine what's changing different information. So we're going to go ahead and leave that one alone for now, and we're going to come over here to Add Examine Field. When you click Add Examine Field, these are the conditions that you can set. Alright, so you can see in this list we have date of service, billing entity, CPT code codes, classification, ranges, diagnosis codes, we've got your facility, a global period, location, and so forth. So the first one that we're going to set up is going to be a pretty simple rule just to show you how it works. I'm going to go ahead and say if the location is Midvale, okay, so far we have if I'm adding or changing a new or existing charge and the location is Midvale, then we want to change certain information. So down at the bottom, perform these actions. We can tell it to change a field to a specific data. We can move the cursor to a specific field in the charge entry screen. We can tell the system to pop up an alert, such as remember your modifiers, or we can tell it to stop processing with an alert. We're going to go ahead and again just do this very simple for now, and we have performed these actions. We're going to change fields to. When you check that box, you do get an additional window that opens, and we can come over here and click Add. These are the fields that you have the ability to change. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to first say the facility. Okay, if my location is Midvale, then I want my facility to be Sugar House Office. Okay, or we can say Midvale Hospital, depending on what I need my rule to do. Alright, then we can click Add again, and we can go ahead and scroll down a little bit further to Place of Service. Okay, we want our place of service to be office. And then I'm going to go ahead and add type of service, and I want that one to be medical care. Okay, so ideally what happens when I'm posting a charge and I choose my location of Midvale, then my facility, my place of service, and my type of service should all populate to the information that I have specified in this rule. Down at the very bottom, we have a description. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to name this Midvale location. And what I like to do when I'm creating the descriptions is I want to know just by looking what this is populating for me. So I'll put something like facility, place of service, type of service. And then when I click OK, I'm looking at this rule, Midvale location equals place of service, type of service, and the facility. So I know exactly what it's doing, and I can see that it is a charge entry rule. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up a patient's account so I can show you what these charges look like and how this works when it is being posted. Alright, so let's go in here and we are going to add a new charge. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and do an office visit, and I'm going to change my location. If you notice, my place of service, type of service, and facility are all blank right now. As soon as I change that location to Midvale and tab out of that, my place of service, type of service, and my facility all populated for me, saving me the time of having to enter it on every single charge I post that take place in that Midvale location. Alright, so that is how the billing rules work for charge entry. It's populating information for you or changing information so that you don't have to type quite as much as you're posting these charges. Alright, so let's go back over here to our billing rules, and we're going to look at the other types of rules. Okay, so the charge entry is pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and edit this one, and I also want to populate an alert. Okay, and instead I'm going to say when the location is Midvale, and let's go ahead and add a CPT code of 66984. Okay, so if my location is Midvale, 66984 is my CPT code, then I want to populate an alert. That way I can tell all of my billers to remember to add the modifier. Okay, now let's go back over to our charge, and we're going to add a new charge. And this time I'm going to do 66984, and my location is Midvale, and here's my alert. Remember to add the modifier, and again my place of service, type of service, and my facility all updated to what I want it to show, and then as a biller I can come up and put my modifiers and my diagnosis code and go forward posting my charges. Okay, so that's how the charge entry rules work. When we go back into our billing rules, the second type is a HCFA 1500 processing rule. Again, this is when you're processing paper claims. For example, we're going to go back into Add Examine Field because that's where we're setting the criteria. Okay, we have billing entity, sequence, facility, HCFA 1500 line 19, location, physician, coverage, and referring. This time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the printed coverage is Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay, so anytime the primary insurance is Blue Cross Blue Shield, or the insurance that I'm submitting that paper claim to, and we're going to add a physician. is Dr. Jones. And again, these are not required on you don't have to have multiple conditions. You can just have one. It's also possible to not have any conditions except printing a 1500 form. All right, so we're going to go ahead and change my fields to, and this time when we look at this window, this shows you the individual boxes that you can change on that paper claim. Okay, you've got box 17A, box 29, you've got NDC information. We can override box 10, 11, 19, 20. Okay, all of these different pieces of information. So, for example, we're going to do his NPI number. All right. We're going to say anytime I'm printing a claim for Blue Cross Blue Shield and my rendering physician is Dr. Jones, I need to change it to this NPI. Okay. If I wanted to, I could also go in and I can change the tax ID. If he has a different tax ID for Blue Cross than he does for another insurance, I can go ahead and change that tax ID here. And then again, down at the bottom, I would want my description to tell me exactly what this rule is doing. Okay, so I would set it something like Blue Cross, Dr. Jones, tax ID for paper. Alright, so again, when I'm looking at this rule, I know that that box or that rule is going to override the tax ID number. Okay, and when I do print a claim, then it's going to change that on a HCFA. Okay, now the next type is an electronic processing rule. Now this one's a little bit different in the information that it displays. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add the billing entity is physician group. Anytime I'm sending a claim electronically and my billing entity is physician group, I can go in and change fields, and this time instead of boxes, it's going to show the loop and segment of the electronic data. So, for example, anytime the billing entity is physician group, I want to change the patient paid amount to 0. That way, when I have collected the copay, the insurance is not going to see that copay on the claim, and therefore they will send you the payment instead of the patient. So I can go ahead and do, physician group, entity, patient paid to 0. And again, I know by looking at this description in my list exactly what this billing rule does. Okay? When you process that claim electronically, this rule will kick in and override the patient paid amount to 0. So there are several options that you have when changing information. There are certain pieces of information that cannot be changed with billing rules because it's pulling from a billing entity that's been set up. It's pulling from physician's information, and of course that data needs to be correct. Okay. Another example, I'm going to go ahead and just change this. I'm going to delete this patient paid and I'm going to delete the billing entity. I'm going to go ahead and say if my CPT code is J3590, then I want to add the HCFA note for box 19 so that it goes across on my claim. Okay, so we'd scroll through this list and find my HCFA note. We might also look at the, if we need a charge notes, we need NDC numbers to populate, we can use multiple rules to create that information. So then we can go in and we can put that NDC number and have it populate correctly every time without you having to add it to each charge that you post for that J3590 code. Alright, once that's done, of course we would change this to match our rule and say, this is for box 19, and then that rule will apply when we are processing the claim electronically because that is the type of rule that we are currently creating. Alright, you can use the delete buttons anytime you have selected something incorrectly. Just so you know, anytime you click on one of these, it's going to try and add it, so you can go ahead and just delete it from there. Now, coming back over here to the add branch. The add branch, if I wanted to say if it was J3590 or it's J3598, okay, that's how the OR statements work. Again, my recommendation is if you're going to create a rule for two different conditions, if it's this or this, create two different rules. They're pretty quick and easy to set up, and it's much cleaner. It's much easier to find the specific rule that you're looking for and not having to go through multiple rules that have multiple conditions. All right? Now, the one that says stop processing down here at the bottom, let's go ahead and delete some of these out of here so that we can go with that action. Let's say if the claim's primary insurance is Medicare, and maybe I have a physician who's not quite credentialed yet and we cannot send those claims. I can say the rendering provider is going to be Larry Jones. Okay, Larry's not credentialed yet. So I'm going to tell the system to stop processing with the alert of please hold claims until credentialing is done, or whatever I want to say. Okay. As soon as that claim is processed, the system is going to stop the processing for this particular claim that meets the criteria of Medicare and Dr. Larry Jones because he's not credentialed. All right, so you can use billing rules to do different things in the system. Definitely helps you with posting charges, makes it quicker, it makes sure that your HCFAs are printing out correctly. It allows you to manipulate the standard system properties for specific insurances that might want something just a little bit different than the majority of your coverage plans. Okay, the last rule type is a UB04 processing. Now again, this is anytime you're printing a UB04, we can go in and add conditions and say if the printed coverage is Medicare, then we need to make sure to change the fields to we've got a tax ID, we've got other fields in here that you can set up. Okay, we can go ahead and change the tax ID for Medicare to whatever Medicare's tax ID number is, for example. Okay, and again at the bottom, just make sure you have it identified correctly so it's easy to find later on. Okay, so that's how billing rules are created. It's cause and effect. If this is true, then do this action, whether it's changing data, processing to stop the processing, populating an alert as a reminder to enter modifiers, the correct diagnosis, things like that. What you can also do in this list, we have this favorites button. Now, just so you know what this is in case it comes up, probably not something you'll want to have turned on. However, when you right click on one of these, you can add those rules as your favorite rules. So maybe they're commonly used rules. When you click favorites, it's only going to show you the rules that you've marked as a favorite. Keep in mind if you come in here and you thought there was a rule and you don't see it, go ahead and click on favorites so that it shows all of the rules that are currently set up. Okay? You can edit a rule at any time, you can delete a rule at any time. Okay? If you click copy a rule, what that's going to do is give you this screen to copy a rule. So this one is 906 Medicaid Test 33A. I don't want a second one for Medicaid, so I'm going to go Blue Cross over 65. What that does is it copies all of the conditions in that rule, and at this point I can go in and just simply change that coverage plan name by deleting the wrong one for this new rule and adding coverage plan name is Blue Cross, and now my rule is correct for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I didn't have to start completely over. It's the same criteria, I just need to make it for a new insurance or new CPT code, something to that effect. So you can copy these rules by using that copy button. The print, just so you know what this is, going to give you a little window, and when you go to preview that, it is simply a list that you can print out that shows you all of the rules that have been created that are in your system currently. Okay, you really shouldn't have to print this often at all, if ever. It is just there for your use. Okay, you can also import and export rules. The reason we have these is you can go in and import a rule that another client has sent to you. You can also export a rule that you want to send to another Management Plus client. So these rules, if you are speaking with another practice and they ask a question, you can say, hey, I have a rule that we use, see if this works for you, and you can send those to each other, and then the new rule can be imported with this import button. Okay, so that is billing rules. If you have questions, certainly let our support team know. We can be reached at 1-800-695-6994, option 1 and then option 2. We'll be more than happy to help you answer questions, help you set up rules, and we hope that this was helpful, and enjoy your day. Thank you so much.